So both of us come from families. My parents are divorced. Your parents were divorced.
Yep.
I think your parents maybe lasted a little longer than my parents. I'm not totally positive. What was your mother like? I don't think I've learned anything about her.
Yeah. So I had a fantastic mom. She did what a mother was supposed to do. I guess I was raised in a I call it hyper traditional. The modern world will call it misogynistic household. My father was in charge. It was his household. My mother was in charge of feeding us and clothing us and sending us to school, and she did a fantastic job. I think that as a boy, as a man, I always wanted to emulate my father. My father was the superhero. So my father instilled a lot of the mindset that I have, but my mother did a lot of the basic things that kept me alive, if that makes sense. She was a fantastic mom, and she's still alive today, and I love her very much. One of the first things I did when I got rich was retire her completely. So she is one of the people I take care of, and I'll take care of her for the rest of her life. And she did the absolute best she could. And that's the reason we moved to England. They decided to get divorced, and England has a better social care system. We had no money. So we got moved to England, and I grew up in Luton, which is the worst town in England, in an area called Marsh Farm, which is the worst area
of the worst
town. So it's like as bad as you can get, like the worst place you can possibly go. I think my school had a 4% pass rate or something ridiculously low. So I grew up in a really bad area. But my mother, yeah, she was fantastic, and she did the absolute best she could. And she always loved my father to the end. But I think my father, in many ways, there's certainly been a lot of circumstances where he sacrificed his marriage to raise us in a very particular way. Because my mother and father would argue most over the raising of me and Tristan, because my dad was so hard on us. But he said, look, you boys are my legacy. You're more important than arguing with your mother. So I think that's actually why they broke up, because he was so hard on us. But I thank him for it. So yeah, but I don't want to disrespect my mother by saying there isn't much more to say, besides the fact she was a very nice, very loving, very attentive mother. That's what she did. But my dad was always my superhero. And I don't know what else to say. My dad was my superhero.
Well, I see it now. My son's only 2, and he's now toddler, terrorist, wakes up every day, wants to go to war. I don't want to go to war. I just want to love him.
Yeah.
And so he is obsessed with my husband. I mean, forget it. The second my husband walks through the door, it's like I don't even exist, right? Yep. Forget the fact that I held him for 10 months. I don't exist. But unless he's sick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, then it's like totally mommy.
Oh, completely.
I'm like, oh, okay. So when you want to go to war all day and you're feeling great, it's like dad, he literally just wants to fight him. He goes up and he hits him and he wants him to be thrown around. And I don't want to do it. I'm like, you're kind of big. Yeah. I don't want to toss you around. Go find your father. Yep. So there actually is a natural proclivity that goes on there too, where like in the way he acts when a man walks through the door, any man, by the way, my son wants their attention. You can see that he seeks their approval at the age of 2. He'll cry in front of the girls, you know. Yeah. Well, it's me, it's my assistant. If it's girls he's putting on, then when the guys are there, he instantly stops the crying and stops the tears. So it's so interesting to watch that and examine that in just a 2-year-old. So
that's biological, right? This is how we charge at the gunfire. This is how men charge at the gunfire, because we want the respect of our peers. We will literally commit suicide for the respect of our peers. Like it's something that's deep inside of us, or it used to be, it should be. They're trying to take it away from us. But how do you get men to go over the trench, over the line and charge at machine guns? Well, you do it because everyone else is doing it. And you don't want to be the only so you have to do it. And you have to die. Like that doesn't make sense. Think about it logically. It doesn't make any sense logically, but it's something biological inside of all of us, because we have this innate feeling of duty and honor, and that's where the courage comes from. And they're trying to destroy that along with everything else. But you're right. This is how men biologically are designed to be. And I was the same when I was young. I remember looking at my dad just going, you're a superhero and I want to be a superhero. That's how it was. So, but yeah, my mother's fantastic and I love her very much. And she's very proud of me and she's very proud of how we were raised. And she's so glad we were strong. Like even when we were in jail, she was very concerned, but she's like, look, I know that if anyone can do it, you can do it. And yeah, so.
Do you want to be married?
Good question.
I heard that's the lover boy tactic. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but.
Yeah. And that's an interesting question because younger me would say no, absolutely not. And the reason younger me would say no is because I'd come up with all the arguments that there's no legal advantage really, and the woman can wreck you and you can lose all of your things, etc. What's the point? I don't want the government involved in my life, all those kind of arguments. But as I get older, maybe I'm getting a bit softer. Maybe I do think sometimes you need to make a decision based purely on love and have the faith of love and faith in your love enough to say, I don't care what the government's going to do about this because I truly believe in us and I think we're going to make it. So would I get married? Perhaps some point. Yes, in the future, I might get married. Yeah, I'm not against marriage like I used to be. I used to be super against it. And I think that's because I grew up in an environment where everybody was divorced. Everyone. So it's like, well, what's the point in this? Oh, wait, so I give her half my stuff and then what? No, I didn't understand the whole point of it. But now I think if I met the right woman, perhaps, yes.
Yeah, marriage is good.
Yeah,
if it's the
convert me, Candace.
Yeah, if it's the right person, if you marry the right person, and I'm saying this as someone who grew up with divorced parents, well, they got divorced after I was out of the house, but speaks to your earlier point about it either impacts you one way or the other. You either want marriage because your parents were divorced, you don't want marriage. I desperately wanted marriage, and I think the ways in which we both have grown. And the confidence that it gives you. I think there is something about people are, how do you do what you do every day? Because you cannot impact. My life is so stable. The nucleus of our household is so stable. And to be able to raise kids and have them see that example of the perfect yin and the yang, there's something divine about it. There's something spiritual about it. It's why I won't accept you. I think you are actually a libertarian right now, and I won't accept you as a libertarian. I think you will not be one. In a few years, if I had to make a prediction, I think you will lean towards conservatism, because even in just the crack of you talking about the attack on masculinity, because first you say, oh, well, if everyone wants to do what they want to do, if you guys all agree and you want to be homosexuals, fine. But then we'll start to realize that libertarianism, live and let live, is what welcomes in through the door. I'm, very against every ill that homosexuality has brought. And again, these are consenting people that are doing what they want to do.
This is true.
But look, evil is evil, sin is sin, and we're yesterday talking about homosexual marriage. Today we're talking about transing.
Well, it's such a slippery slope. This is the thing, right? You're completely right, because the idea of live and let live was a fantastic one if it could actually operate without slippery slopes and it descending into chaos and anarchy, and it can't. So this is the difficult thing about it. You get called a bigot for saying, this is my line, I don't agree with this, and you're going to be called bigoted and you're going to be attacked. But truthfully, it's just understanding that, like you're saying, it's a slippery slope. And it's unfortunate.
So what is the slope that we want then? Okay, then we should aspire towards heterosexual relationships. We should aspire towards marriage. We should, and this is the mold that I am selling all the time. Wouldn't have said this 10 years ago. I was probably more libertarian when I first got into politics. And what's the big deal if people want to do this to themselves? And then I realized, no, there is a reason.
No, and you're completely right. And the reason I gave that example is because I'm currently in a legal jeopardy or a legal situation where people who have nothing to do with my life are trying to say that people were victims when they weren't, when everyone was consenting. And you're right. I agree with you there. I also think with the whole LGBT argument, it's interesting because I will be honest and say I do think there is a difference between G and T. I think they are different things.
Of course.
I think they're massively different things. However, you're right. It's a shame. It's such a slippery slope where you can't just say to people, live and let live, because it's going to be hijacked and Trojan horsed. And they're going to Trojan horse it, and they're going to inject something in it that destroys the lives of every single person on the planet. And they're going to try and do it. So you have to draw a hard line. You have to be a bigot. You have to never give an inch, because if you give an inch, they take 10 miles.
That's more than 10 miles. Look where we're at. None of it makes any sense. But these are real evils that we're fighting today. And I think it's because we haven't put those firm lines in the sand and said, no, actually, there is such a thing as right and wrong.
Well, this is the thing I love about, and this is where religion comes in, right? Because I used to be an atheist. And then exactly what you just said about there's something divine about marriage, and exactly like you said, there's such a thing as sin. Everything you're talking about is religious. You're completely correct. You eventually, if you're going to wake up and be the kind of person who has hard parameters and said, this is right, this is wrong, it's very difficult to do that without then turning and understanding that has to come from God. Who else is going to decide what is right and what is wrong? And people say, oh, they're all man-made religions. Well, then why does it go against so many of the wills of man? Some of the sins that man want to go and do, the religions are against. If we made a religion wouldn't be against our own sins, would it?
Right.
So it's interesting that this is almost proof for God in so many ways, when you're going to wake up and realize that there is genuine evil in the world and there's genuine good in the world, and there are two sides and two camps. And I do believe that the good is on the side of truth, and I do believe that comes from God. And there's many different ways to God. I think there is one God and there's different religions, and I don't want to argue the differences between the religions, because I think we have a lot more in common than we have, especially in the fight against evil, than we have as differences. But yeah, it's super interesting. And you're right. Firm lines are absolutely not really required. And if we don't have them, it's why society ends up in the position it's in, with so many subjective lines and your truth, my truth, the truth. And you're completely correct. It's not very often I sit with somebody who I feel like says something and I feel corrected, but you're right. Live and let live is hijacked. Yeah. It's hijacked. And it's unfortunate that me as a person now, especially, and maybe this is more of a personal thing. Maybe this is more of a personality trait, where I'm in the position I'm in, I'm saying what I believe is the truth, and I'm out here trying to help people, and I'm saying about the difficulties I went through in my life so others don't have to go through them, just as you said. But if somebody doesn't want to listen to me, I'm like, okay, you don't want to listen to me, I don't care. You do what you want. But that live and let live mind frame can be hijacked, because when I'm saying to people, okay, don't do what I want, or don't do what I believe to be good, don't do what God believes to be good, do what you want, I don't care. And then they get in a large enough group and they end up attacking morality.
It redefines, normalcy. It redefines morality. And, I recently was sitting down having a conversation with a friend of mine, Brandon, and when I first got into politics, I wasn't so staunchly against homosexual marriage. I didn't speak out on certain things, abortion. And then I saw it firsthand. I just examined just the differences in my relationships with heterosexual couples and homosexual couples. And homosexual couples, I'm talking about two men. You don't realize that God designed a man to be with a woman because it prevents men from giving entirely into the worst components of who men are. Just having sex all the time.
Yeah,
right? You can't do that. If you're with a woman, okay, maybe it's menstruation, maybe it's pregnancy, maybe it's afterbirth, but there are these natural barriers that make it so that your relationship has to be about something else other than just sex. When I'm with my homosexual friends, they talk about sex. I don't think they realize that heterosexual couples don't just sit down for lunch and be like, we banged 20 times last night because we could. They think that that's normal. So then you talk about how that bleeds into pornography, that bleeds into wanting to talk about sexuality in the classroom, how that might bleed in to suddenly wanting to speak to children about sex and go, oh, this is all normal. It's actually not normal, but because it's normal in a homosexual relationship, you think that it's actually normal.
Totally right.
And so I have suddenly realized, and this is why I become so staunchly conservative, how it all bleeds into everything. And there is such a thing as objective rightness, and there is such a thing as objective wrongness.
Completely correct. And I agree with absolutely everything you just said. So my question would be then, what do we do? Do we force everybody to be Christians, or force everybody to be religious, or how do we do it?
Well, I think the first thing is having the courage to talk about it. And nobody even talks about these topics anymore because they just go, oh, they've won, so we need to let this go. And more you're seeing culturally, people are afraid of being canceled. I mean, what I just said to you is grounds for a cancellation. How dare you question this? How dare you? I even believe now, after seeing the ways in which society has made children believe that they're all trans. I went to university. I went to high school. I didn't graduate with a single trans person. Now you want me to believe 1 in 4 children suffers from identity issues? No, that's socialization.
Completely.
You place that on them. So is it such a far stretch to imagine that the same happened in the when homosexuality came to America, and then we popularized it and we put Ellen on TV and we gave Melissa Etheridge a platform, and suddenly pride parades were happening everywhere. Whereas you don't see this here. You don't see this here in Romania, where we're sitting, because we haven't. This is the power of culture. This is the power of pop culture. When you make something, you have to go the other way.
Completely.
You need to normalize it. You need to say, actually, this is abnormal.
Absolutely.
And this is what normal is. And it's not both. So yeah, I've become very conservative in all of these perspectives.
And you're completely correct. You nailed it. When I said, do we force everyone to be Christian? You nailed it by changing to the exact thing I was going to say. It's about culture. It's a cultural issue. And it's completely and utterly correct. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why. I mean, I don't state this with arrogance. I don't want people to understand. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm trying to make people understand the situation I'm in. I was the most Googled man on the planet at one point. So I had a massive impact on the culture, and it was dragging in the complete opposite direction that the culture wants to move in. Mm-hmm. I'm dragging men in the complete opposite direction that the Satanists and the people who want to turn us all into slaves want us to go in. So I think that anybody who sits at home and realizes that my legal troubles appearing basically directly after that is a coincidence, then you're awfully naive. So it's unfortunate also that the way the world works, at a certain level of influence and power, the justice system almost breaks down. We see that even in America and most other countries. It all just becomes a big game and a big show, and it's about power plays and a whole bunch of conversations behind the scenes. It's not about justice anymore. So it's very concerning, because you are right. We are in a culture war. And it's culture which is absolutely not really defining the direction in which we move. And this is one of the reasons why I reverted to Islam, because I feel like the Islamic culture is the strongest. You feel the culture.
I was wondering, because you were Christian, and I definitely do not know enough about the Islamic faith to sit here and debate you on it. I'm never a person that will debate somebody on something that I'm not an expertise on. Yeah. But I will say that I'm sad that you're not a Christian anymore, because I can sense, perhaps it's because you felt that Christians weren't doing a good job defending their beliefs.
Yeah, I think that God should be feared. I believe that God should be feared. I fear God. Mm-hmm. It's one of the only things I fear. And I believe that also you see God to a degree, or you see religion, how you see yourself. And I see myself as a person of strong principles and strong morals. And I like to think of myself as the kind of person nobody really wants to cross, not because I'm a psycho, but because I'm a man of capability and I'm smart and I'm strong and nobody wants to make an enemy of me. So I feel like I find an affinity to a belief system which has very similar outlooks. And there's a whole bunch of other things I can say from the Quran and Islamic texts, etc. But to keep it very vague and very broad for people who are not Islamic, I felt God when I was in an Islamic country. If I went to an Islamic country,
That's the problem.
I
The
felt
West-
God.
West is
You don't
Christian.
feel any God.
I think
How is
that's
it a
it.
Christian country if Satanists are mocking Jesus on the streets?
I understand what you're saying, and I was trying to gather in my head what pulled him away from Christianity, and I said it's probably the example. If you're thinking that America is a Christian country, and you're thinking that the United Kingdom is a Christian country,
They're not.
and you're going, Christianity is getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And the truth is that America is no longer a Christian country. We're being run by people that are satanic. Hollywood is satanic, and
Right.
Hollywood is running America.
Right.
So you're not wrong. But I think that right now America is facing a spiritual battle. And for the first time in a very long time, Christians are starting to stand up and speak about our principles.
I hope so.
And we could have used you as a
I know,
Christian.
but I have seen in California, I've seen Christians and Muslims get side by side when they were complaining about the LGBT
I did
teachings
see
in
that
schools, which is
recently.
fantastic. And I know what you're saying, and that is true, but it's almost like when I go to an Islamic country, I feel God around. You see it. You see it in the way the people are dressed. You see it in the fact that everyone's in a family. You see it in the fact that there's a mosque on every corner. It's in the air. And it's almost like when I'm in Dubai and I'm talking to my friends, my Islamic friends, and I explain to them the things you have to protect your child from in an American school. They literally think I'm lying. They're like, no, surely. Like, it's
What about
mind-bending to
what
them.
about African countries that are Christian?
Okay, so yeah, this is interesting. So
yeah, they still are mind blown by the concept of what we're fighting in America. So America is unique. We shouldn't say that this is the
right.
blanket.
You're right. They're right. There are Christian countries which still take Christianity.
And they're like,
very
what do you
seriously.
mean men can be women? Like they think you're crazy.
And we're in Romania, and Romania is a country which is
Christian.
very conservative and very Christian.
Very Christian.
And they don't buy into any of this garbage
No,
either.
none of it.
So this is absolutely not true. It's unfair to say all Christian countries are like that.
America is an exception and not in a good way.
Yeah, I feel like the whole West is, unfortunately.
The West is. I've said on my show the entire time. The West is falling. The fact that we're even having these debates is not good.
Yeah, the West has fallen, and unfortunately,
Russia, Christian country.
Yeah, absolutely, a very Christian country. So yeah, you are right, but I felt an affinity to Islam. I felt God in the air, and it's difficult for me to explain any other way.
Okay, that's fair enough. I won't push you any further on that. All right, let's get to your case that's happening today. So, and why conservatives are screaming about it in America, and why they feel that Tucker didn't push you enough on this case.
Push me.
Okay, so first and foremost, one thing I want to clarify for people that are watching this is that there seems to be this understanding that you are being prosecuted, or you're being indicted rather, for human sex trafficking charges. I've read the indictment, and I do want to make it clear the words human sex trafficking occur on the indictment, but then it makes it very clear that what they're referring to is they've kind of extended the term. It's not what we think about in America when you think of a bunch of children being put into a truck and taken over the border against their will. They're basically saying that if you trick a woman into coming into a country by using the lover boy method, then they consider that to be human sex trafficking. So the definition has definitely expanded over time.
Well, it's also ridiculously misogynistic to believe that women can't make their own decisions on anything. So the whole thing about it is misogynistic. But yeah, you're correct. That's a very important distinction.
Essentially what they're saying is we have a show in America called 90 Day Fiancé. That is the lover boy method, is women that go over to the U.S. They're clearly coming for citizenship, but these women kind of get duped and they sponsor these people. This would be the same vein of what they're trying to describe. I've read it myself, of what human sex trafficking can be, which is
it's an
a woman
reach.
fell for you, fell in love, moved over here overseas, but it's only because you were very convincing.
Yeah.
That is the definition given in the indictment of what they're referring to.
Correct. So I'll give a very quick rundown on the case. Everything from these old videos, old clips, my webcam company, things that happened 10 years ago have absolutely nothing to do with the criminal case. Absolutely zero. Anything you see from before 2021 has nothing to do with the case. The case against me is that from 2021, my brother and I, when we were already worth hundreds of millions of dollars and already successful and famous, created an organized criminal group. And our intention was to convince women to move to Romania to make TikTok videos so we could steal the TikTok money.
And TikTok, and they mention OnlyFans.
Correct.
On the indictment page. And they say that you did this using the lover boy method. And it almost reads, what's interesting to me and why I was compelled by this case is just that because they tremendously changed it. When they were investigating you, we were told that there was a woman who went to the UN who escaped your grip, and that, she said, I've been held captive.
Yep.
And then after they investigated, they came up with what it sounded like regurgitated Andrew Tate videos.
Yep.
The lover boy method, which is in one of your videos where you're talking about women. So it seems like during that time where they held you in the cell, perhaps the initial case that they fed to the media fell apart.
Yeah, I believe what happened, and I have to be very careful what I say, but what I believe happened is in April of last year, Tristan and I had some visitors here from America who were only in the country for 5 days, made some very strange demands financially. When they were rejected, they called the American embassy and said they had been kidnapped. Those 2 women, we deem now to be professionals. One of them has accused 7 men of kidnapping in her life. And she's also lawyered up instantly from a left-wing NGO because she's currently being sued by us for false charges. And she seemed to be very well supported and funded. So I don't know if she was sent as an agent. We're not entirely sure. So there's a very interesting beginning to all of this in April. The Romanian authorities arrested us for precisely 2 hours and threw it out and knew it was all garbage from the beginning. The case remained open. Nobody understood why the case remained open. My lawyer made repeated requests to close the case. They wouldn't close the case, and it remained open and absolutely and utterly dormant. When I was canceled, when I was deleted across all social media and canceled and lost my bank accounts, my Uber account, my Stripe account, my Gmail, absolutely everything, literally within the same week, the case was picked back up, which was very strange. I was followed. They tried to find evidence of any kind of crime at all. They couldn't find any crimes whatsoever. They then raided my house for a second time with the intent of getting my electronics, which they got. They went through all of my electronics and they could find nothing of actual criminal intent. What they did find is my brother and I and our personal assistant, because at the time, if anyone who knows the internet or has been around for a while will remember, my face was all over TikTok. You could not get rid of my face on TikTok. Me and my brother were explaining our strategy for how we got so big on TikTok to some friends of ours. They then said that we were forcing them to do the TikToks for our money, for our brand. They made this huge reach and said it's human trafficking because we're forcing women to make TikTok videos.
Yeah, so that's the part that registered to me as strange. It started as we were told it was kidnapping, which is it's very serious, that somebody fled to the U.S. embassy. This is the woman that you're talking about that you say you're alleging has also accused 7 other men.
Alleging, it's literally now on Twitter. You can see the complaint we have filed against her. 7 men she is accused of kidnapping. She's done it with 7 different boyfriends who didn't buy her what she wanted. One of them killed himself.
Okay, wow. So
she's a professional.
Okay, so it's very strange that she comes over, she accuses you of kidnapping her, but then they decide not to prosecute that, but they fed that to the media, that you kidnapped someone, that she fled to the U.S. embassy. Yep. Then all of a sudden we learn that they're investigating you, and the charges then go from kidnapping to, well, actually what he was doing is a lover boy method, which we're saying is human sex trafficking, yep. And that these women didn't know what they were getting into. They thought that he was going to marry them. Yeah. And actually what he wanted them to do was just to make TikTok and OnlyFans videos.
Yeah. So the lover boy method, traditionally, the way it would traditionally work, the reason it was criminalized and added to the criminal code is that I would be a Romanian man and I would meet a Romanian girl. We would get married. Marriage is part of it. I'm not married to anybody. We'd get married. We'd move to a richer country. You go from a poor country to a rich country, let's say America. You put the girl into sexual work, let's say prostitution, and then I'll keep all the money and I'll control her or coerce her by pretending to love her. That's what they're saying. That's how it traditionally works. Mm-hmm. They've accused me of using the lover boy method because basically I was a nice person. I was nice. That's the thing that's most people don't understand about the law. It's so ridiculously subjective. If they want to weaponize it and use it to attack you, that's exactly what they'll do. They can accuse any man of using the lover boy method if you send nice messages on a text message. If you're like, hey, baby, how are you?
So did you promise to marry these women?
No, I didn't promise to marry anybody. What I had was girls. The 2 girls who were in the criminal file asked me how to be famous on TikTok. I told them how to be famous on TikTok, and I spoke to them nicely the entire time. These 2 women have come out and made videos repeatedly saying we're not victims of anything. I don't know if you've seen them.
No. Okay. So just to back this up.
The victims
in the indictment.
Correct.
Have made videos saying we're not victims.
Correct.
I did not know that.
It's all over Twitter. In fact, on I think it's my pinned tweet, you can see the criminal case against Andrew Tate. The 2 victims who the DCAR are accusing me of using the loverboy method on have made videos saying, he just told us how to do social media. We're not victims.
I've never seen any of them being aggressive or rude. They've always respected people.
Ai fost amenințată?
Nu. N-am fost niciodată. Dacă eram amenințată, automat nu mai eram idiotă să stau în casa asta. Suntem prieteni buni de
2 ani de zile, cam așa, poți să mă treci pe mine ca și victimă dacă eu n-am spus că sunt o victimă.
They gave this statement to the police. The police ignored it and said they're brainwashed. So they ignore it. So now we have a criminal case where we have girls who are saying they're not victims of anything. Me telling girls how to make money on TikTok, or not even how to make money, because no one makes money on TikTok, telling them how to get famous on TikTok, and them saying that I forced them for money, which doesn't exist. There's no money in the criminal file. There's no transactions. There's no financials, nothing. The girls themselves have given statements in my defense. They're being thrown away so they can continue with this case saying that I've brainwashed the women. So now we have, imagine in court, my brother and I, and the two victims all on the same side,
It's insane.
saying nobody's done anything wrong. We're all friends. We were talking about TikTok accounts. And then you have the state with no witnesses on its own saying you're victims and you're bad and you're going to jail.
So it seems like what they're doing then is this is where the content from 10 years ago is coming into play, where they're saying,
To
well, look,
conflate.
they're conflating this now. So even though these charges are from, and I read the indictment again, 2021, but look at what he said 10 years ago, which somehow confirms what we're saying. We don't have to listen to these women.